Welcome to In the Envelope, a podcast from Backstage, the #1 resource for actors and talent seekers. I am your host, Jack Smart, awards editor at Backstage, and I'm here to guide you through every aspect of the entertainment industry with the help of some of your favorite stars. These intimate, inspirational conversations with today's most award-worthy film, television, and theater artists provide you, dear listener, advice on how to live the creative life, personal stories of success and failure alike, and maybe, just maybe, a tantalizing glimpse in the envelope.
To go into a room and literally just have an opportunity to act or to sing or to dance or to do whatever you do, you get to showcase that and share it with somebody for that little bit of time. And that's a joy, that's a pleasure.
Welcome to another episode of In the Envelope. Welcome, actors, artists, film and TV, pop culture fans, and I hope this week maybe some Shakespeare nerds, fellow Shakespeare nerds. We have an excellent episode for you, courtesy of the very talented, the brilliant interview, Corey Hawkins, who you likely know from such projects as Straight Outta Compton, in which he played Dr. Dre, Black Klansman, in which he kind of stole the movie in the middle of the movie with that beautiful sermon that he gives. But he's also been on and off Broadway. He is a DC-born but New York-trained actor, and just the perfect Backstage interview. He is chock full of craft tips, philosophical wisdom. Everything he says about auditions is what I like to call pure gold. And this year, Corey stars on both In the Heights and The Tragedy of Macbeth, two completely different projects that are both absolutely in the awards conversation, which at this time of year, especially those of us at Backstage, we are working hard at, narrowing down the contenders, informing readers about what they need to know about this upcoming SAG Awards, Oscars, all of that. Speaking of Backstage, two editorial pieces of content I would like to mention. Editorial pieces of note. We have a news article on the newly formed Juilliard Black Alumni Association, of which Corey Hawkins is one of the members. We're going to link to that in the episode description and the article that goes with this piece. I encourage you to check that out. And I'm throwing in a piece on the best Shakespeare monologues for, studying and auditioning actors. And I just have to say, it is one of many such resources on the Bard on Backstage.com. So I encourage you to check out the monologues piece and then just click on the Shakespeare tag, because that will take you to all of our many advice pieces. There's so many resources. Listen, as Corey says in this interview in which we touched on working with Denzel Washington and Frances McDormand in Joel Coen's The Tragedy of Macbeth, Shakespeare is pretty timeless. It's pretty eternal. And there is a reason that actors continue to play these roles and speak these monologues in auditions and learn about humanity and poetry and truth itself with these 400-year-old plays. My inner nerd is showing. Let's get to it. Let's take a quick break and then get to this lovely interview with Corey Hawkins. Thank you so much, Corey, for joining us. Hey, if you are an actor or an aspiring actor, someone at the beginning of your artistic career, and you haven't signed up for Backstage yet and you don't know how it works, I have good news for you. Backstage is offering 30 whole days completely free just for our In the Envelope listeners. If you visit backstage.com/subscribe and enter the code ENVELOPE, you will have full access to the site where you can make a profile, upload a headshot, upload a reel, start applying to the thousands of casting notices uploaded every single day on the world's #1 casting platform. Again, we are giving listeners of this podcast 30 days completely free to try out Backstage. Go to checkout, that's backstage.com/subscribe, and enter the code ENVELOPE. If you want to be in contention for an Emmy or for an Oscar or for a Tony or for a SAG Award, do as many of the guests on this podcast have suggested and use Backstage. We are here for you. Again, free 30-day trial, backstage.com/subscribe, enter the code ENVELOPE. Corey Hawkins' training at the Juilliard School of Drama set him on the path toward becoming what he calls a well-rounded actor, and now, with a Tony, Emmy, and 2 SAG Award nominations, he's well on his way. Corey has appeared on and off Broadway in Straight Outta Compton, The Walking Dead, 24 Legacy, Black Klansman, and Survive, and this year enters the awards conversation both as Benny in Lin-Manuel Miranda's movie musical In the Heights, and as Lord Macduff in Joel Coen's The Tragedy of Macbeth, starring Denzel Washington and Frances McDormand. Here is the brilliant Corey Hawkins. Corey, hi, how are you?
I'm good, Jack. How you doing, man?
I'm good. I'm so excited to talk to you. Is this a full day of press around Macbeth?
This is pretty much a full day of press around Macbeth. We just had our London Film Festival premiere, which happened to be closing night.
Fabulous, right.
That was incredible.
So fun, yeah.
Yeah, we had a really good time.
Right. I mean, I feel like everyone's returning to something like normal, and so premieres are extra special now.
Yeah, it's good to be back in person. It's good to be, it's just fun. It's finally good to just be in a room with other people, and be together again like this. For me, it's the magic of when the lights dim, and then everyone, you can popcorn and candy gets unwrapped and everybody's together and the cell phones get turned off and everyone gets to just sit in a space and actually be with each other. I think we've all missed that and sort of craved that.
Oh yeah, I've underestimated it. I feel like it's the power of like the big screen, and this is a big screen movie, I think, also.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, man. There's no question about it. Speaking of big screen movie, I mean, the theater we were in holds, it's the Royal Festival Hall, so it holds thousands of people. Wow. And the screen. And so we were talking about, sitting through it, and we were like, of course we got to sit through it. It's one of those. He also just wanted to see how it played because I don't think he had seen it in a theater that big as well.
Sure.
The audience reaction and everything, and it was magical, man.
Are there any trepidations about watching your own work? Or sitting through that whole movie, like you just said?
There's always trepidations. Sitting next to you. I was literally like, every time I come on screen, it's just everything inside you just tenses up and you just look down at the floor and in hopes that it's different from what you did before. I don't know what I'm hoping. I mean, I just, because at a certain point, you can't do anything about, like you do your work and then you let it go. And so when you watch it, it's just a very strange feeling to see yourself projected up there, and you start noticing all your imperfections and this and that, and then it just go down a rabbit hole. But I will say, I will watch this movie again and again solely for this incredible cast, this incredible crew, and just the work that everybody put into this, man. Like it is in my estimation, it's a masterpiece of a piece of cinema, and it's a master class when you watch it. Yeah.
Oh, it's amazing. And your performance, you're doing great work in this movie and in The Heights. So congratulations on like a really great year.
Thank you.
Talk about 2 completely opposite roles. These are 2 completely opposite movies. So it's really impressive. You've spoken to Backstage before, so I know, but could you tell me about your relationship with Backstage? Did you ever use Backstage for casting notices?
I remember, Backstage was all we looked at when I came up in New York, actually. I grew up in DC, but New York was home for, over 10 years. And after I graduated from drama school, Backstage was all we looked at. Like, we were just addicted to it because we were just like, just the opportunities it provided, the information it provided. Like, it was our link to the industry. And I'll be forever grateful for that. And it's just interesting to see it shift over the years as time and technology has shifted over the years as well. Mm-hmm. It's really cool that it's growing. The platform is growing, and it still provides that same thing that we were looking for as young actors just graduating school.
Gosh, that's so great. Thank you. We love, of course, asking about the training, and I'm going to ask you a lot about. I want to really ask about Juilliard, and in fact, the Juilliard Black Alumni Association was formed this year, and I have to ask you about that too. But
Yes.
In terms of the training, what are the takeaways? Like, of course, you did Shakespeare at Juilliard. Did you do any like musical theater stuff as well? Like, I assume that your Juilliard training must be very formative for what you're doing today.
It certainly for Shakespeare, and we can talk about that later.
I'm ready to nerd out. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Me too. But in terms of musical theater, the focus at Juilliard is to just create a well-rounded artist, right? Like that's the goal, and whatever that means to you, it's incumbent upon you as a student. And I think this is true as in all drama school. What you bring to it, and everything you bring to it is what you get out of it. And so, for me, I grew up singing. I grew up singing in the church, and I grew up singing with my grandmother who was a deaconess, and my great grandmother who was a pastor and ran a church. She just passed away at 103, but she was still in church up until great grandma was, but that was that gospel roots was my love. I never considered myself a singer because I have way too much respect for the people who actually call it a discipline. Like it is the training that goes into it and everything. In the same way I have respect for the craft of acting and people who do that and know that. That's why I had trouble calling myself a singer. People were like, stop, why aren't you calling yourself a singer? Sure. I'm like, I understand what goes into that and the discipline. And so I wanted to make sure within the Heights side, put everything into that. But we had Deb Lapidus at Juilliard, who also she's one of the best teachers of musical theater. She teaches at NYU as well. And I just thank her for that. I mean, Oscar Isaac had her, Jessica Chastain had her, everybody, Adam Driver, like when we were there, like everybody had her. And she was my rock. Yeah.
It sounds also, I love your point about it's true for any training program, and maybe it's true for a life in the arts of you get out of it what you want to put into it. It's to what extent was that empowering? Like, did you know what path through the arts you wanted? Was it stage? Was it screen? How has the goal changed since those early days?
I think if your intent and your goal is pure, I think no matter what profession you're in, it is always going to continue to evolve. And so for me, the goal before Juilliard was, I thought I was going to go to California and I went to another school in California before I went to Juilliard because I didn't think I had it in me to get into Juilliard. So I didn't even audition. So that was, what I thought my path was going to be. And then I realized it was something different. And then that brought me back to New York City. And then after Juilliard, or the whole time we were at Juilliard, the only goal was to be a working actor. Like that was the thing. It was like whether we were doing repertory or a regional theater or whatever that is, that was the goal, was to work on things that mean a lot to us and just grind on the boards.
Yeah.
Broadway was the Olympics. Like that was like, if you made it to Broadway, like, that's just, that's it. And I think it's that's still true. But yeah, for me, it just sort of started to shift over time. Started doing off-Broadway, and then finally, luckily, I got to do Romeo and Juliet on Broadway. And then that changed and evolved. And then I went from that to doing the action movie with Liam Neeson and jumping back over it. So it was just, yeah.
It is crazy. And I feel like also those projects are all over the place genre-wise or tone-wise. And like, how do you get a role like an action movie with Liam Neeson? What was that? Like, what was the big break into Hollywood? Was this a question of getting the agent and doing a bunch of auditions, or?
That was it. I mean, when I did Raisin in the Sun at Juilliard with Danielle Brooks my senior year.
Yes.
And she played my wife, and I played Walter Lee, and we all in that class, like, we talked about what that next step was, what that leap would be. And so from there, I got an agent, and then the agent, from there, it was just literally hearing no all the time. Just no, 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 to this, to that, not enough this, not enough credits. There's always that too, right? Like there was always the thing of like, it was what do they call it? Catch 22. Like,
Yeah.
Like it was just like, I'm like, well, how am I supposed to show them what I can do if they don't give me the opportunity? And then they're like, yeah, but you gotta, it just drove me mad. And then, but for me, it was just like, you just don't give up, I think that's what it is. And that Liam Neeson film was nonstop. I still talk to Liam this day. We were both actually just shooting in Berlin. He was doing his film and I'm shooting my film literally in two sound stages right next to each other. It's just crazy. But yeah, we did nonstop. That's where I first met Lupita Nyong'o and, Julianne Moore. And again, we all keep in contact to this day, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, I had a tiny role in it, but I was there for months shooting. And sometimes I felt like an extra just sitting on the plane, like in this action, and Liam's beating the heck out of me. And, we just had a really good time in that film, action, drama, thriller, and then went back to the boards, so.
Yeah, always back to the boards.
Yeah, that's what it comes back.
Do you have an audition philosophy or audition advice that you always give?
No, because I think I'm the
like
worst.
You love auditions, so.
I think I'm the worst. Yeah, I don't know. Like I think. Because that's the other thing. Some people are really, really good at auditioning. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Some people are not great at auditioning, but then can show up and just do the work. But we do have to learn and understand what that is, the process of auditioning. But what I did realize, and this is the thing, this is where the shift was for me, was that auditioning it wasn't them auditioning me, right? And I might have, I was probably being presumptive, back then when I didn't have a leg to stand on or credits or anything like that. But I was like, this is my opportunity to go into a room and see if these are the people that I want to be working with, right?
Yeah.
Like, is this something that I want to be a part of? How is this? Because if I get this role, I have to work with these people for the next few months or a year or whatever that is.
Sure.
So that shift in thinking for me definitely helped. Helped level the playing field a little bit. It helped me feel like, choose me. That sort of started to go out of the window, and but it's a sacrifice too, you know what I mean? Because again, you're going to hear no a lot, and you have to be willing to sacrifice for that.
Right. Did you know from the beginning that there would be lots of no's? Like, were you prepared for that?
I think so. Also, the other thing is at Juilliard, you don't audition. Once you get in, you don't audition for anything while you're there. They just get you. And I think that's a little different from some other drama schools. So we weren't really, I think we came in maybe thinking, okay, we about to, let's come out and knock it out the park. Like, you know what I mean? Here we are,
Sure.
We're here. And then I honestly, I think I might have expected it to be a little different or to happen sooner or quicker. And honestly, I think it has happened relatively quick for me in perspective and looking back. But I consider this a career, so it's not a sprint for me. But again, sometimes it was just if I could just get 2 auditions or even 1 audition every couple of months or something like that. Sometimes it was really slow and it was really hard. We had to get other jobs, and I mean, it was just. It was the struggle, but it was a beautiful struggle. It was a struggle that we really enjoyed and kind of loved on, you know what I mean? And I think it built us, built our character. All of my friends that come from that New York scene, we're all working now, gratefully so, blessedly so, so, but I definitely thought I'd hear no a lot less than I did. And then again, that shift in thinking, again, the opportunity to go into a room, again, not just the level of playing field, but to go into a room and literally just have an opportunity to act or to sing or to dance or to do whatever you do. You get to showcase that and share it with somebody for that little bit of time. And that's a joy. That's a pleasure. We don't get that often. So that's what I look at auditioning as well. Yeah.
That's beautiful. I think that's exactly what, especially early career working actors need to hear. It sounds also like auditioning, as you're saying about Juilliard, they don't have an auditioning class per se. It's not the real world. It's more ensconced, right? Like
It's changing though. When I was so it's definitely they're shifting. And that's the beautiful part about Juilliard is that they understand what the mindset is, and so it's not quite a bubble, but it is shifting now so that they're starting to understand you because your classes you're working with casting directors too in your fourth year, so you do get an opportunity to go out there and kind of see what it's like before
getting thrown into the deep end. Yeah. Because there's nothing like doing it for real, I guess. But I am hearing kind of in general academia is realizing we want to prepare our artists for the real world, and for actors that means auditioning. And so
and
they just be craft.
No, I mean, because half of the time we don't get the opportunity to do. Most of the time, that's what we're doing is auditioning. I don't care how far you go. Like even as a producer, you're auditioning. Or as a director, you're auditioning for these producers, or as even as an actor, you're still auditioning other people for, as you rise, you're auditioning your director, you're auditioning, so it's just a matter of shifting that thinking. And I think schools and like you said, academia, I think it's starting to shift for the better. Or at least I hope,
And your idea about like, each is an opportunity to act, and you're absolutely right. It's kind of an actor's full time is to audition, and so the audition room is the chance to practice.
Yeah.
Are you the character building and the role preparation that you do for auditions? Is that kind of the same that you do for a role? How similar are those two processes?
Oh, that's a good question.
And of course, it's changed over the years.
It has, man. Because I'm also learning to work with a level of ease. And I'm also learning that ease is actually helping me and has helped me in the past with auditions, because sometimes when you try to do too much, you know what I mean? Or you try to over prepare, sometimes it takes focus away from other jobs that or other auditions that because you only have so much on your plate, right? You only have so much bandwidth, and then you have to live life as well. And that informs everything that you do in that audition room, everything you do in that audition room. And so I think part of, so there's a little bit of, my prep for roles differs greatly. Like if it's a period piece, I mean, there's a whole different process for that, accent, whatever that is. But the great part about going through drama school or studying or training is that you're prepared and you have the tools that you need. You have that roadmap, it's like you don't need the roadmap. If you're driving and you get lost, you need a roadmap, but if you're driving, where you're going, you don't need it, and I think a lot of us inherently know when we get these auditions, we know what to do, you know what I mean? But sometimes, we get in our own head and get in our own way a little bit. So ease, I think letting it go, I've definitely learned, you don't have to stress about being off book or that sort of thing. It used to bother me. I'm like, I go into a room and I'm like, and you're worried about that instead of living and being here, and I think there's something, again, ease, finding and whatever that means for you as an artist or you as an actor.
That is so key. Yeah, it does mean different things for different people, and it goes back to the like no neediness, desperation.
Yeah.
In the audition room or just on set or in life.
Yeah, man. I mean, people can smell that a mile away. You know what I mean? Like whether it's I don't know, relationship, dating, like work, whatever that is. Like that neediness, that whatever. It's sometimes it gets in your own way. It doesn't allow you to be your full self because you're needed. The work that you're bringing into it. You know what I'm saying? So it's like it's just a different way of looking at it for me.
But it's not a lesson that you master. And then you're forever chill, right? And maybe this is where I can ask you about Macbeth, because I imagine that working with Frances McDormand and Denzel Washington is, I don't know, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Is it nerve-wracking? Is it high stakes?
Certainly high stakes. Oh man, yeah. I mean, look, put the words in my mouth, man. That's it right there. I remember the audition, right? First of all, everybody and their mama was trying to audition for this this film.
Yeah.
And I remember I was overseas and Joel was in town. He was in LA, but I wasn't in LA. And I'm I'm telling my agent, I'm like, oh my gosh, what are we gonna do, man? Like, I want to be in the room. And they're like, well, you can tape. I'm like, no. I want to be in the room, man. I mean, and people have philosophies about like what works best for them and being in the room or taping, and some people like one or the other. But for this, I wanted to be in the room. So I flew, we told them I was there. I flew in literally for one day.
You basically lied in saying that you were there?
Yeah, basically lied. And then I was like, so I'm like, oh yeah, I'm here. But I just remember being in the room with Joel, and the way he, again, you never master that neediness. So like, cause you wanna win the role. You wanna show what you can do. You wanna, and I had to, for me, the key in that audition, I call it a work session, is what I call it, is that I had to, again, flip the switch and just go completely antithetical to what I was, And so a lot of the choices that I made for Macduff were maybe completely opposite to what, I'd seen before, or what people normally would, think of with Macduff and the scenes that we had worked on in that session. And it was great. I remember asking Joel, I was like, I'd love to read some other roles for this movie. And Joel was like, let's do it. And then I ended up reading some other characters, and he was like, do you want to come back tomorrow? And I knew I was flying back. I had to fly back overseas. I was like, no. I was like, I know the play, let me step out. Like, he's like, step outside for a bit and come back in. And then we just ended up vibing, and I got his vibe and he got my vibe. And he came in with this sense of not knowing. He was like, he said, you probably know more about this than I do. And that just, I'm like, maybe, I don't think I do, but it leveled the playing field for me a little bit. And it gave me a sense, a space in which to work.
And you were familiar with the play? Yeah,
I had done it in my third year at Juilliard. Yeah. So,
and you had played the title role.
I played the titular role. Yes, sir. And that was a whole nother thing for me, because Michael Kahn, who runs Shakespeare Theater in DC, is former, he used to be the head of Juilliard. I remember bringing in a scene for him in my second year, and it was from Macbeth, and it was the dagger speech. And I remember thinking, I'm about to murk this. I'm gonna kill it. Like he's gonna love it. Like, you know what I mean? I remember like setting up lights and turning off, then putting like a set piece in the, it was just, again, I was doing too much. Way too much. More than I need to. It was everything except the words. It was everything except the work. And so he ripped it apart. And that moment humbled me. And from that moment on, I realized, I was like, I'm doing everything in my power to make sure that never happens again. You know what I mean? I want to make sure that I can go toe to toe with, the best of them. And I spent the rest of that year just working on the classics, working on text, and then I ended up getting Macbeth in the next year. So that was a shock and a surprise to me, and it ultimately came back around and helped me later on for this film. So with
Joel Cohen saying, "Oh well, you probably know more about this than I do." Whether or not that's true.
Whether or not it's true, you know what I mean. I was just the fact that he even said that was,
huge.
That's just how he is, man. He's just such a collaborative artist, and I appreciate that.
That's so cool. And what goes into it? I guess this is speaking to this role in particular, but maybe all of the roles. There must be research for something like this. The role's been performed many, many times by many, many actors in many, many shows. Like, are you having to think about that? There aren't as many, of course, any cinematic adaptation of Macbeth is going to be its own thing, but there's also Macbeth films to consider, or maybe not consider.
Well, there are, and I think you have to. I think this is a bit of a non-traditional sort of art take on it, and I think you have to consider those films. I think Joel certainly, and Bruno as well, in terms of the cinematography of this film. You have to consider the worlds in which we're inhabiting. I mean, it'd be silly not to. You know what I mean? That's our jobs, is to look back and sort of see And then, you know, some people make a market choice not to ignore that, you know. But I also think it sort of differs in so many ways. Just the choice to make Macbeth and Lady Macbeth older, and how that impacts my character. And I talked to Denzel about this too, is just that, you know, that the idea that this is somebody who you look up to. You know, you're a Thane, Macduff is a Thane as well, but this is someone who you idolize and have idolized for many years, someone who you hope to emulate, and that respect that goes into that. And, you know, just my natural respect for D as well. Like that, all of those things go into it. And so a lot of those conversations were had, but specifically the rehearsal process was just focusing on the work, because you know, it's good to have those other iterations in the back of your mind, but at the end of the day, you know, this is the play's the thing, and it's right in front of us. And this is, you know, it's different because we're the people inhabiting these characters this time. What does that mean? You know? And so that's where we started from. And that was great.
Yeah, you can't base your choices in this role primarily or entirely on something like the design, but you're saying, especially, the cinematography must inform it, maybe subliminally. This is the world of this project, right?
Certainly. And I think actually it's a great point. And I think that the black and white of it all is also really, because this play is about, I mean, there's so many, it's contrasts, right? It's good and evil. It's fate versus choice, and it's black and white. And we were talking about this yesterday, but that thing, you know, whether, again, it's subliminally, like that black and white allows the audience to come in and bring whatever they bring to it. When people ask, what do you want them, you know, the audience to get from this? I don't know. I can't, you know, I can only bring what I bring in between the black and the white, you know what I mean? And that also allows the characters to, you can just imbue these characters with so much nuance or so little. You know, sometimes if there's too much going on, the nuance sometimes gets missed. And Joel wanted to focus on the nuance of the language and allow that to be the thing that drives us. That's the driving force. That's the drum beat. That's the, you know, a drum, you know what I mean? That's what that is. And so, yeah, it does. It is all a conversation, and even more so with these guys because they're masters of their craft. So, you know. Yeah.
I mean, I love that Shakespeare, going back to the roadmap idea, Shakespeare's got it right there in the rhythm of the words, that's what it has to come back to.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
This is the nerdy stuff I love talking about.
Dude, me too, because I had a conversation just recently about just what this is, and Shakespeare sometimes, you know, I think it can sometimes seem like this sort of dusty relic that sits on a shelf, you know, and can only be observed and analyzed and discussed with, you know, those who feel they are the be all and end all here, you know, but to quote, but like, you know, it just, for me, it's more than that. He was a poet, you know what I mean? And in the same way that I can identify with it, because, you know, yes, I played Dr. Dre and I know NWA, they were poets of the streets.
So cool.
He was a poet of the streets.
Yes.
His politics, his all of that. It was the lower class who, you know, stood in throngs to that's what they, you know, that was their entertainment of, you know what I mean? It was the common denominator. It was like leveling the playing field. That for me is the most important part, and the beautiful part of being a part of this is that it's all right there. It's all on the page. The musicality of it is inherent in who we are, you know, the way we speak, you know, all of that. It's just a different time, but he's talking about the same stuff. I just dig it because you can just flip it and it applies to, you know, where we are now. It applies to where we were 10 years ago. I mean, you know, but that's a sign of a great writer who's responded to, you know, the human condition and where we are.
The common thread between playing Dr. Dre and playing Shakespeare is fascinating. That is,
it's wild, man.
That probably has more in common than any of your other screen roles. Like,
I would say, yeah.
It's both poetry, Or both, yeah, like you're saying, they're both poets.
I think so. I mean, they all are. I mean, rap in general, hip hop in general, what it was born out of. Again, I mean, these are people who are, there's a struggle there. There's an inherent struggle, and I think that's the thing where we all identify, whether you're Black or you're white or you're Asian, Latino, like whatever that is. We, whether you're a man or you're a woman or identify as other, whatever that is. We all understand struggle, and we all can find that common language. And I think Shakespeare beautifully was able to, and just like sitting in a room together with these actors who are all stage actors in this film as well. We sat in a room with torn up wooden boards and backdrops from old Warner Brother movies, and we just sat there and talked. And then the conversations turned into other conversations but it all came from what we were reading on the page. And I just thought that was so dope, man. I was like, this is where we are. And this is what Shakespeare does for us today. Yeah. It's the same thing when you hear a rap song, you get together, you might talk about it, or whatever song you like, whatever that lyricism is, there's something about that. I don't know.
No, I love it. The play's 400 years old. It's like the fact that they can still resonate and still people can come together and have that connection. And of course you mentioned masters of their craft. I just have to ask, like Denzel, I guess in particular, I'm thinking about like the last act or the last scene with the two of you. Yeah. What you're saying about your character looks up to his character and then you look up to him off screen. Like, yeah. I'd love to hear about how that last scene resolves all of that or concludes all of that, or like it all comes to a head. And I also just want to know what fight choreography with Denzel Washington is like.
Well, first of all, great questions.
Too many.
No, it's good. It's great because it's good to finally it's like after seeing it to actually go back and like think about it and talk about it. Like,
yeah.
Because I dig it because I just used to love hearing other actors talk about what that process is and I remember reading like Actors at Work and reading Francis's chapter in that book and being like, what? Like, she's amazing. Yeah. Like, man, and then now to work with her on this. And then literally last night I was talking to her about that parapet scene. We were sitting on like the mantle of this fireplace. And like, I'm just like, we're just talking about this moment in this film and also the space that it allows for the climax of this film. You have two Black men sitting there talking to each other, leveling with each other. The moment when he realizes he's actually met his fate and then still chooses to keep his head up and go on. That moment when Macduff steps in and sees the man who he has idolized his entire life, his hero, up on that parapet, another man who looks just like him in this world where there may not be many who look just like him. Sure. And it's just so simple and it's so powerful, just the imagery of it, but also just where they're coming from, man. Like, and then they both choose to get on with it. It's like, this is where we are. You've murdered my family. You've murdered, all of that. Like, even in the scene in the forest, when I'm talking about that, and that's the difference between Macbeth and Macduff, right? Mm-hmm. I think Macduff is a strong soldier, but it's his humanity, it's his morality, it's the thing he turns away. And I talked to Joel about that because we had set up the camera right there for that to catch that moment, and I had to turn away. And we talked about what that. He was like, "No, I love it. Let's move the camera around and go," because this man, because being strong, this idea of strength and masculinity and what that is. He says to Malcolm in the scene, he says, Malcolm's like, basically he's like, man up, man. Let's go and get him. He's like, I am a man, but first I have to feel it as a man. And that is okay, that's okay. And I love that, man. I'm like, yo, like we can learn a lesson from that. And the fact that he hears that, he asks again, he's like, my wife, but my children, but all of them. And then he blames himself. After being told that Macbeth did it, he blames himself for not being there. He doesn't blame Macbeth. I just think that's so, and so that was where we operated from, and it all led up to, and I just remember talking to Denzel about what that is, because Denzel has children, who I work with, JD, and they've raised a family, and they and just talking and mulling over that process and what that is, to finally meet there on that parapet, and then go to town. It's like it's me and you. And I got spoiled because I'm like, I mean, what do you do now? You know what I mean? It's like, now it's like, I want to work with directors like that, actors like that all the time.
That's true. Yeah.
Well, I hope to be that, all the time and do that for someone else one day.
Yeah. This is why the dream, the goal, the ambitions have to change as an artist. They have to keep evolving. Well, so we always have to ask, of course, for the advice, and you've given excellent audition advice. What do you wish you'd known? Speaking of this idea of the goals changing, what do you want early career actors to know? What's like the number one piece of advice?
Oh man, that's it. That's a good one. To be honest, other than working with a little more ease, like if I had seen, if I could talk to younger Corey, that would be what it is. It's just like, let it go, because everything that will be. What's yours is yours, and no one can take that from you. Whether that's, a role, whether that's whatever it is, it's yours. It's already written. And so I've learned to just stop stressing about stuff. Yeah. And it actually has just opened up. Once, I sort of have this thing, and my great grandmother used to talk about it all the time too. It's like, you can't receive anything, with a closed fist, right? Yes. So you just have to open your hand and just allow it and let it, and that letting go of it all, you're opening your hand so that you can receive it, whether it's now or it's in 10 years or it's in 20 years, it's coming, but you just gotta be open.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would have, but I don't know if, I also appreciate the fact that younger Corey went through and learned those lessons too. You know what I mean? So it's like, part of it you do have to go through, right? Like,
you can't learn it before you learn it, I guess.
Yeah. You learn it from experience and when you're ready, yes, and all of that. And I think, and I'm still learning. So it's crazy. And I'm like, advice to young actors. I'm like, I don't know. Absolutely. Somebody give me advice, please. you know.
And we'll do this again in 10 years and you can give 10 years ago advice to this Corey. Yeah.
Exactly, man. I hope so.
Can I ask one more quick question we ask everyone? What is one performance, stage, screen, TV, film that you think every actor should see and study? This is where I make people pick favorites. Well,
I mean, it's going to be an easy one, and it's probably not the one you want to hear, but we were talking about this again. I think Macbeth is literally something that will be studied in film schools. It will be studied in drama schools. I think theater, whatever that is, watching Frances McDormand and Denzel Washington go toe to toe in this movie is a lesson again in what's possible. What is possible? You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be this. It doesn't have to be that. It can be, Shakespeare can be what you need it to be and what you want it to be. And that's how malleable it is. And I think these actors, the risks that they took putting this up and mounting this and doing this at this point in their career, they didn't have to. They didn't have to, they don't have to prove anything to anybody. Mm-hmm. They are still flexing in those muscles. And I think that's great. So everyone go see that.
Of course. Gosh, Corey, thank you so much. This was so lovely.
Thanks, man. This was fun. This was dope.
What a great conversation. And so many working actors are going to get so much out of this. So thank you.
Oh, man, that means a lot. And I'm just incredibly grateful to Backstage and everybody. I got a lot of it out of it back in the day, too. So, and
That's
still.
so good to hear. Yeah.
Thank you.
In the Envelope is recorded at Lotus Productions and Hyperbolic Audio in New York City, and Soundbox LA, Mark Grouse Studios, and Buzzies in Los Angeles. Thanks as always to our producer extraordinaire, Jamie Muffett, and to the team at Backstage, Samantha Sherlock, Mark Stinson, Caitlin Watkins, and of course, Kasey Howe. Visit Backstage.com, and don't forget, you can subscribe to Backstage by using the code ENVELOPE at checkout for a free trial. That's right, 100% free. For more exclusive content, join us on Facebook and Twitter at In the Envelope, and subscribe, share, and leave a comment. Who would you like us to interview next? Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time for another glimpse in the envelope.